Jabim to all, we know that it's very deeply saddening to hear the news of atrocities on our people, and when there is such a horrible and such an inhuman atrocity committed on this young girl, 19 years old girl, and the way even the evidences are destroyed by the police and the administration is so shocking that I don't know how any human being can bear such kind of violence against another human being. I think if the people are not responding, that means their humanity is dead. That's what I would think. So, I think this sort of incidences, show us again and again that how this ugly caste system has this very inhuman form, and it keeps the hope of people shattered into pieces. So I just wanted to pay my respect to our sister who has been so, I don't have even the words to say, what has been happening. But I think this is the time also for us to reflect back on our lives and commit ourselves fully to the cause that is, I think, more important than our individual lives. And I think, the best homage for the departed one will be committing ourselves again to the mission of Baba Sahib Ambedkar and to this great cause of alleviating the sufferings of our people. So I think with these few words, if anybody wants to respond, please do. Otherwise, we will go on reading the remaining part of Caste in India. But please do respond, because I don't know what to say on these occasions, but I think we have to commit to our communities, back, and really make this destruction of the caste system as the center, sort of the core of our lives.
Okay, I wonder what is the mechanism of response for people across India, because social media is strong, but and in fact it is responsible for much of the government's response. But having said that, from the Dalit leadership perspective, I was just wondering what are the forums available to keep logging these things on a systematic basis, and also to reach out to the law and justice aspects. How do we help? How do we involve, say, maybe legal support for the family, or financial support? How is it? I think maybe at some point, if you can comment, not only for now, in the future, how to respond as a unified body to take care in a holistic way. Uh, the survivors, these aspects as to how to continue a legal aspect. I think honestly, I wonder how many are very clear about this thing. It's puzzling in a sense. One is to express personal anger or anguish in our groups. The other is to make a public statement in a concerted way where they know that we all are involved. Like people like change.org have been pushing all kinds of mails for crazy reasons. I think change.org is silent in the last few days. I didn't see anything regarding these two, which is so distinctively shocking. As to the so-called petitions, they call us for nonsense. But when it comes to real issues like these, they are totally out of the scene. It's very clear that it's so caste.
I think one of the things that we can do is we can write on the behalf of IIDF one letter, and we will take it up in this. Suniti?
Sir, we are working on that, and it has been prepared. It's just we have forwarded it to President Sir and our other members to check it,
Yeah.
and then I'll represent that letter soon on behalf of IDF.
I think Rajkumar bhai, one of the things that we can do is we can get a kind of a solidarity letter, like 20-30 organizations from all over India signing the sort of a document and sending out. like one organization from Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, because we see the protest everywhere. But if we can show that there is a national or even international body of a coalition of various organizations, that puts a lot of pressure. One of my friends is in Korea, and he's saying that he has sent me a lot of information today this morning, and he's saying that the Korean media has taken up the case of Hathras so. Uh, am I clear now? Clear?
It's audible, but not as clear as earlier times, Mangesh bhai. It's a little distant. A little
Clear?
distant.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Now it's loud. Now it's loud. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this one of the things that we can do is, is Korean media, they have picked up on the story, and there is a lot of discussion on caste in South Korea. So, I think we have to find this, and there is a friend of mine who is, lobbying with some of the news agencies and, providing them information. So I think we need to show that there is some kind of a solidarity, all over India basis. So maybe we should try to rope in people from different parts and show a kind of a solidarity, because state-wise, locally, region-wise, people will be protesting. They will be writing to the DM. They will be going to the government offices. But I think there has to be some kind of a consolidated national response to such things, that we are one, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to whatever northeast, we are one. That message has to be given.
Is there a consortium of these multiple forums and fronts and organizations?
Not difficult to do. If some of us can take an initiative, I can pull in 10 organizations from all over India easily. Their names can feature.
I think all of them coming together, and that will make it a very powerful consortium of entities, is one thought.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is it possible to start? I don't know who runs change.org, but starting from sanitary pads to you have messages coming on. I mean, all kinds of things. But I'm really shocked that I don't know. Do you get change.org mails in your mailbox? Petition?
Yeah.
Did you get any last 5 days?
No.
See, that is so strange. So forget them. Shall we make one which actually represents the Dalit community and call it something and let it go on as a mail, which probably reaches pretty fast when it comes to communications. So it may be a good idea if one can frame a mail and Letta can take charge of this kind of issues to respond back at least very quickly, if not the forum formation and many other things. This is one of the quickest ways to do that.
Yes. Anybody would like to respond, or should we read it and then at the end of it we discuss it?
Just
Because
to
we have only one page to finish today, and then we have plenty full of time to discuss a lot of things. So Sonika, I think we should read, and then at the end of the discussion today we can discuss on this.
Yeah. Okay. Sure, sir. So today Shashank sir is not here. So anybody would like to read?
Okay, I will read. No problem.
Yeah. Okay, Pankaj sir. Please.
What is? It is the last page only, no? It
Yeah.
It is true that caste based on belief from there, no? Now to summarize, I take from the thesis, the summary of the thesis.
Yeah.
Correct, no? So I'm reading from the hard copy, page number 32. Okay. Now to summarize the main points of my thesis. In my opinion, there have been several mistakes committed by the student of caste, which have misled them in their investigations. European students of caste have unduly emphasized the role of color in the caste system. Themselves impregnated the color prejudice, the very they very readily imagine it to be the chief factor in the caste problem. But nothing can be further from the truth. And Dr. Ketkar is correct when he insists that all the princes, whether they belong to the so-called Aryan race or so-called Dravidian race, were Aryans. Whether a tribe or a family was racially Aryan or Dravidian was a question which never troubled the people of India until foreign scholars came in and began to draw the line. The color of the skin had long case to be a matter of importance. Again, they have mistake mere description for explanation and fought over them as though they were theories of origin. There are occupational, there are occupational, religious, etc. caste, it is true, but it is by no means an explanation of the origin of caste. We have yet to find out why occupational groups are caste, but this question has never even been raised. Lastly, they have taken caste very lightly, as though a breath had made it. On the contrary, caste, as I have explained it, is almost impossible to be sustained, for the difficulties that it involves are tremendous. It is true that caste rests on belief, but therefore belief comes to be the foundation of an institution. The institution itself needs to be perpetuated and fortified. My study of the caste problem involves four main points. One, that in spite of the composite makeup of the Hindu population, there is a deep cultural unity. Second, that caste is a parceling into the bits of a larger cultural unit. Third, that there was one caste to start with. And fourth, that classes have become caste through imitation and excommunications. Peculiar interest attached to the problem of caste in India today, as persistent attempts are being made to do away with the unnatural institution. Such attempts at reforms, however, have aroused a great deal of controversy regarding its origin as to whether it is due to the conscious command of supreme authority or is an unconscious growth in the life of a human society under peculiar circumstances. Those who hold a latter view will, I hope, find some food for thought in the standpoint adopted in this paper. Apart from its practical importance, the subject of caste is an all-absorbing problem, and the interest aroused in me regarding its theoretic foundation has moved me to put before you some of the conclusions, which seems to me well-founded and a group upon which they may be supported. I am not, however, so presumptuous as to think them in a way final or anything more than a contribution to a discussion of the subject. It seems to me that the car has been shunted on wrong lines, and the primary object of the paper is to indicate what I regard to be the right path of investigation, with a view to arrive at the serviceable truth. We must, however, guard against approaching the subject with a bias. Sentiment must be outlawed from the domain of science, and the thing should be judged from an objective standpoint. For myself, I shall find as much pleasure in a positive destruction of my own ideology as in a racial disagreement on a topic which, notwithstanding many learned disquisitions, is likely to remain controversial forever. To conclude, while I am ambitious to advance the theory of caste. If it can be shown to be untenable, I shall be equally willing to give it up. Yeah.
I think the key point here is the right path of investigation, because there has been investigation into the caste issues, but there is no right way to investigation. And in writings and speeches of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, it's very important that this spirit of inquiry and the right inquiry into any subject matter that has been puzzling Baba Sahib's mind, or even for us, it's very important to have a right method to investigate something. And as we talked in the beginning, that Baba Sahib Ambedkar was somebody who would try to understand some problems before he would try to act on it. So this is as a young Baba Sahib Ambedkar, 25 years old, and fresh in the Columbia University, studying in the Columbia University, pursuing his PhD, and he's coming up with the theory of caste. And I think that is very remarkable that at that age he's even thinking about the theory of caste. So I think let's think about this theory that Baba Sahib Ambedkar has proposed in this very interesting paper. And I think it's very interesting also to look at the theory of destruction of caste, isn't it? So as we talk on in the context of Manisha's murder by the caste Hindu minds, we can think about, keep in mind that how this caste perpetually gets repeated in the social, political, economic life of the country. And at the same time, understanding theory has a purpose in Baba Sahib Ambedkar's scheme of thinking, that it's precursor to to bring a change or a transformation. So I think let's talk about these two things: the theory of caste and also the theory of the practice of annihilation of caste. I think the theory without practice will not be a right way to study Baba Sahib's thoughts, and I think this paper is an example of it. It has been a very difficult paper to read, as we know that we have been struggling with a lot of concepts. There were a lot of anthropological concepts, sociological concepts, then Gabriel Tart's social distance, imitation, and a lot of various concepts that we came across. As I told you in the last reading sessions, that this concept of Sanskritization, that the lower caste try to imitate the higher caste, is very interesting sort of a social phenomena, that a dominated class try to imitate the dominant caste, and that process was later on defined as the process of Sanskritization. And as we know that Baba Sahib Ambedkar has signed out from this structure of the caste, and he embraced Buddhism as a way out of as a challenge to the structure, the caste, the system of caste. And all the time we see that a lot of caste struggle for the positional changes in the caste hierarchy. That if they are Shudras, they will try to claim that they are Kshatriyas, but nobody wants to come out of it. So I think this theory of caste also points out to some of the strategies by which we can challenge the caste, and one of the definite challenge to the caste system is desensitisation, as to how we come out of that container of the caste where we don't any caste, but we try to follow the best models of the humanity. And in the Buddha, Baba Sahib Ambedkar saw the best model for a human being, for the society. So I think we have to bear in this, when you understand the theory of caste, automatically the theory of the destruction of caste becomes clear. So Rajkumar bhai, before you go, would you like to say something? Kamalan? Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, Mangesh bhai, you are audible.
Right.
I think Songa Rajkumar will be back after 10 minutes. That's what he told me. That's
No
what is
problem, no problem. We can keep on discussing because I think this is important. And we have seen all these phenomena, sociological phenomena and anthropological phenomena in our day-to-day life. Also, we have seen it, and therefore, I think this paper Caste India is so important for all of us to study together.
very true.
I have to put a question, today about what do we think about this theory of caste that Baba Saheb Ambedkar gave in 1916, and now after 100 years, 104 years, how do we look at the problem of the caste? Do you think that there is any change in the way the caste is practiced, or when like 104 years is a huge is a long time, almost a century. We are studying this paper after a century, right? This paper was read in 1916 and we are in 2020. That means 104 years of this paper.
He was so prophetic about this thing. And he says in the first page itself, this as long as caste in India exists, Hindu will hardly intermarry or have any social intercourse with outsiders. And if Hindus migrate to other regions on earth, Indian caste will become a world problem. And he's so prophetic about this, about what we're seeing in Cisco case and this California, and so probably 104 years ago he has predicted or have any social intercourse to be spread all over the world. So that was so prophetic about his theory of caste.
Yes.
But this caste theory, it is more about how the genesis of the caste was a thing, rather than whereas in annihilation of caste, the disadvantages and the negative effects of all this caste have been discussed thoroughly, and the reason to why we have to come out of the Hindu religion, and that is the take-home point. The first thing is you have to come out of the Hindu religion first. Whether you go to Buddhism or Christianism is the next step. The first step is you come out of it and you have a free mind. Then you see wonderful options to choose from. That is definitely a take-home point. That is, I think this is the at this point in this all these happenings. I think Indians, we should really be mobilized to come out of this Hindu fold, and then think in a free manner to which where we go we take this. That's what. At least from personally, I have really come out of this Hindu fold for quite long time. I'm searching for a new avenue or a better avenue to go. So that way. That's
Very interesting. Because last reading discuss generated a lot of heated discussion, no? So we thought that this will be a sort of open session. People will be able to speak freely of their minds, or if I think that we have finished reading this paper, then I think we can think about other things. Okay, for another half an hour. See why I find this paper particularly interesting, that it summarizes, as Brother Velu has said, about the genesis of the caste, and so far we haven't seen any theoretical clarification theory caste came into being, and people have been the purity and pollution, and Baba Ambedkar has demolished all those points of views, and he has established how the caste came into being and what were the means by caste was protected: sati, child marriage, and also widow. The way the widows were reduced to mere existence, and so on and so forth. So I think this is very remarkable, and how he has explained very logically the origin and the genesis and the spread of caste. And I think these are very vital point. Now there were some questions about actually when the caste system have come into being. Definitely we can see that it's a post-Buddhist development. We can see that it's a post-Buddhist development, the way these thousand caste have come into being, and there was a class of people wanted to enclose themselves, and they were into an class with intermarriage, no relationship with other class of people, and that is how we have seen that the first class that was to enclose itself was the Brahminical caste. So we have seen that, and it is very remarkable to look into that. But now, as we come here today, I would like to just say that in 2006 there was a study conducted by a few of academicians, and that study was titled as the Untouchability in Rural India 2006, and it proved that the untouchability is practiced in different forms and different sites throughout India. So we say that untouchability is outlawed in the Constitution of India, it's illegal, but despite of that, the practice of untouchability exists. And then there was a study conducted in Gujarat where it was put that the practice of untouchability also exists in the urban areas. Like when you go to rental house, people won't let you have the houses. And now we see these heinous crimes like what has happened in Hathras and the other place. I think what we are looking at is a kind of a structure of caste. As Baba Sahib Ambedkar said, that the singular caste is not possible. The caste is always a system, and we have seen that how the people are stacked against a system. Like the whole system, the DM is Thakur, the police of the whole police force is filled with Thakurs, the doctor who with Thakur, everything the chief with Thakur, and the perpetrators of the crimes will be Thakurs. So then we see that whole systemic things comes into being, and we are not facing an individual, we are facing a kind of a system. And Baba Ambedkar has talked about caste in terms of the ghost of Nu. Ghost we cannot see, but how do we kill something that we cannot see? So I think these 2 points are so vital that we are fighting a system, and we are fighting a notion of mind that how do we do that?
Mangesh bhai, how was it like? You say initially we said it's a homogeneous group, we are a homogeneous culture. Then what led to these divisions, this packaging? And how was this packaging actually done? Were the natives packaged to a lower caste, or what was this packaging? How was it done? That's what is the genesis. We want to know what is the genesis of this packaging. How was somewhere turned into Brahmins and enclosed themselves? Who were the people who were the Brahmins who enclosed themselves? How was it packaged? Is there any idea how? Because when it was all, I mean, it's a mixture of a heterogeneous group, then homogeneous into a proper homogeneous culture. And then how was this packaging done? That is what we are really. That's how we can go into the genesis of this caste system. That's what
Yeah,
is discussed.
I do not have any historical, facts about it, but we can have this kind of a experiment that we have been doing is, after the Buddha, when Ashoka came into prominence, he banned all these yajnas and yagas. And there was a period of years in the history of our country where the Brahmins, all the privileges were gone. So there was a revolt against the Ashokan Empire, and that's historically correct. That Ashoka's grandson Pushyamitra Shunga murdered him. There was this dynasty, and Shunga was anti-Buddhism. He's so much anti-Buddhism that he killed the monks, he destroyed the Bodhi tree, and he has even you will be surprised to know that the Chinese Buddhists even won't take his name. They hate him so much. I was surprised to difference in the Chinese Buddhism that they won't take his name Pushyamitra Shunga. He's such a hated person. So what has happened is after that the Brahmins started consolidating their power, and that is where the abstract laws of Manu were codified. It's a post-Buddhist development for sure, and therefore we have seen that for 1500 AD, before 1500 it's considered to be the time of the arising of practice of untouchability. That is 300 AD. 300
So,
AD. Baba,
the fall of an empire like Ashoka led to the, I mean, this consolidating the, I mean, led to the Brahmins consolidating their power.
yeah,
The,
yeah,
when there was the sudden fall of the great empire, so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
where they got all these ideas into, and division could have started from there. That's what it's.
And that's why we have this interesting thesis of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, revolution and counter revolution. So
True.
there was a revolution of equality because no religion has the equality as the center of it.
Okay.
Equality between human beings, equality between the sexes, and that's why the Buddhist Sangha is all about, where we forget all our differences and we relate with each other as human beings. And then there was counter revolution of inequality,
True. That
isn't it?
was.
So historically, I'm sure that some of the historians can certainly find out the evidences to map out the period in which it's very clear that untouchability came into being. Practice of untouchability came into being 300 AD, and Baba Ambedkar has given very interesting argument for that with historical sort of understanding.
That is very important for us to dismantle this notion, this caste notion. So once we know the origin, that it should help us in dismantling it.
That's true. I think this 1940 Baba Saheb Ambedkar wanted to print these two books together, this Caste India and Annihilation of Caste.
Acha.
So he wanted to bring these two books, two of his one paper and this speech together, and he wanted
Yeah.
to publish the consolidated book.
Acha.
And he was, that was his idea. But I don't know what kind of addition Baba Saheb done to this paper. But his idea, he was still he was referring back to his paper, even in 40s. And what we can, one of the takeaway from this is that, as we know that in the Columbia University, Baba Saheb was a student of economics. And his interest for the community was still there. He hasn't forgiven the community, because see, Columbia University is in New York, and you are studying PhD economics in Columbia City. The next career for you is a Wall Street. All these big names, Benjamin Graham, and this all these big names in the investment, they were studying in the Columbia University PhD economics that time, near about that time. So the next course of action for Baba Saheb Ambedkar was to become the investment banker. Okay, the investment banking is supposed to be the highest, highly paid profession in the world. And in fact, when Baba Saheb Ambedkar came to India, he started as a consultancy for stock exchange. But the people didn't come to him thinking that he's an untouchable. So now why I'm making this point, because he was trained to, he could have been in the stock exchange doing all this investment banking, maybe earning crores of rupees, millions of dollars that time, but he chose to come back. And while he's studying economics, he is so much interested in social problems that he is writing a paper on caste in India. This anthropology was not his main subject. His main subject was economics. And we know that he has written that book, The Problem of Economy, and the problem of the finance in the British provinces. Both of the theses are still valid today. They are still relevant today. I think that Problem of Rupee is the book which is the only textbook which is studying abroad on Indian currency. History of Indian currency. There is no other textbook than Baba Saheb's book. So one of the takeaway from us is that Baba Saheb Ambedkar never has forgotten his community. Whenever, even he had the best of the best careers in the world, he could have become the investment banker. Columbia University, the PhD from the Columbia University, New York, has only one pathway to go. Stock exchange, New York Stock Exchange. Or, join some big international organization, or join some big multinational company. So I think what we will do. We will stop the discussion on the book today, and we will discuss on the current issue of our community. If you all agree, should we do that?
Yes.
Sure, Mahesh brother.
Yes, yes.
And
Yes,
also
bro.
the next book to read that we will also discuss.
We will let you know the next book.
Yeah,
What we do now, Sonika, you take the recording off, or keep it for
yeah.
ourselves.
Uh, a- as you say, if you want, then I'll stop. Stop will
What?
be better, I think, because we are going to have a general discussion, I think. So I'll stop the
Okay, then
recording.
stop the recording. Stop the
Yeah,
recording.
better stop it.